That product had been in the marketplace. It was a fajita maker. And the reason that it was tilted was that they thought that you could hold your taco shell or fajita shell underneath the grill and scrape the hamburger meat into it. Needless to say, that didn't sell very many units. George Foreman had just regained the heavyweight championship at 46 years old, and his agent was looking for products for him to endorse. And there really aren't a lot of products that a 46-year-old heavyweight champion can endorse outside of the sports arena or boxing arena. And we turned that slanted grill, which is really the unique selling proposition of this product, and we came up with the tagline, "Knock out the fat." And we turned the slanted grill into a benefit that you could cook food that had grease and fat in it, and a lot of the grease and fat would drain away from the food that you were cooking, so you could eat the foods that you really loved with a little bit less fat than they would normally have.
Hi everyone, this is David Paull, and on this episode I'm talking with Rick Cesari. Rick is an incredibly experienced marketer in the field of direct-to-consumer and direct response advertising. He's one of the key marketing minds behind mega brands such as the Juice Man Juicer, OxyClean, the Sonicare toothbrush, and even GoPro's direct-to-consumer advertising. Rick is also the co-author of the book Building Billion-Dollar Brands, where he shares a ton of what he calls successes and cautionary tales from throughout his career. This conversation is packed with tangible advice that you can benefit from immediately, so check it out. Hey Rick, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey Dave, it's great to be here, and I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to do this.
It's my pleasure. So for those who don't know you, give us the short version of your life.
All right, that's got kind of hard one to do because I'm a little bit on the older side, so there's a lot of story to tell. But basically, just quickly, I graduated from college and didn't quite know what to do, so I moved down to Florida and became a real estate broker. And I have a degree in biology, so let's start there. And I started working in real estate because I read a lot of books that's how you could make a lot of money, and there were more millionaires made in real estate. And I bumped into somebody who was promoting real estate seminars, and I started helping him do that, even though I didn't have a background in marketing. And in 3 years, we were able to build one of the largest real estate seminar businesses in the country. And this goes back, dating myself a little bit, to the mid-'80s. But what that experience taught me was really how to use a lot of direct-to-consumer marketing, and it taught me salesmanship. And probably the biggest thing it taught me was it was just at the time when people were switching over from doing print advertising to television advertising. And we were kind of one of the first ones to start using direct response television to promote products and services. Very quickly after that business, I was interested in health and nutrition. And I started drinking a lot of freshly made juices after reading some books that was a good thing to do. And my brother and I started a company called the Juice Man, basically. And we basically educated the country about the benefits of drinking fresh juice. And that business, we were in the right place at the right time with the right product, and grew to 0 to 75 million in sales in about 4 years. And we sold it to a company in Chicago called Sultan Housewares. I decided to take a little bit of time off, and I had a local Seattle company call me up and say, "Hey, we're interested in doing the same type of marketing you did for the Juice Man." Well, that company was called Optiva, and they marketed the Sonicare toothbrush. And I helped them build their business to about 100 million in sales. And, it was the first sonic toothbrush. We can talk a little bit more about that later. And then after that, I just people started coming to me with really good products. And the very next one after that, the company that bought our juicer business, Sultan Housewares, they had a product. It was a fajita maker at the time, but it turned into the George Foreman Grill. And after that, we did all the original OxyCleans. We did Billy Mays' first infomercial, and a lot of other projects. I'm telling you, the big home runs and the well-known brands. And probably more recently, one that your listeners will recognize is we did all of the television marketing for the GoPro camera. And all of our, the one common thread through all of those, Dave, has been really using direct response are brand response principles and doing direct-to-consumer marketing to help build all those products into household names.
That's an amazing story with some incredible brands. I guess the $1,000,000 question is, did you ever do anything with that biology degree?
That's a great question. And, the where that came in handy is I've always basically used a concept of selling by educating the consumer. And I've always been interested in health and nutrition. And when I just did the juicer business, there was a lot of science involved, and really the biology degree did come in handy there in helping market that product.
That's perfect. What an interesting road. Really fascinating. So last year, I believe you and your co-author published a book, Building $1 Billion Brands, which I just finished reading, got a lot out of it myself, and we'll certainly link to it here along with the podcast. So it seems to encapsulate a ton of what you've learned throughout your career. So what's the synopsis of what the book is all about?
Yeah, it was a really fun book to write. I mentioned a lot of those products I worked with, and there were many others, but I found that all these products had some basic similarities. And so one of the key aspects of the book, Building $1 Billion Brands, are the 5 key. I put together what I felt were the 5 keys to building a great brand. And that if you're a startup, you have a new product, you're just starting a business, you're an entrepreneur, I wanted to simplify things that I found useful that really happened with every one of these products, so that you could take those and use those 5 keys if you were building your own business or brand.
So take us through those, and let's touch on each of those.
Sure. So the 5 keys, the very first one, and some of this is really basic marketing 101, but again, I didn't study marketing in college, so I kind of learned out in the trenches. But really the very first thing for any product or service is you have to develop a unique selling proposition, or USP. And that seems like really basic information, but you'd be surprised how many businesses don't differentiate themselves from any other business in the marketplace. And that's really the key to building any type of success. And we talked about the Sonic Care toothbrush earlier, and it's an easy example. The USP for the Sonic Care toothbrush wasn't necessarily the Sonic technology, even though it was the very first Sonic toothbrush, but the USP was really that the toothbrush had an ability to clean beyond the bristles, and no other toothbrush in the marketplace could do that. So that's what differentiated that product, and that's what we built all our advertising around. And so almost every successful product will have a USP, and I always urge business owners or product developers to really find out what differentiates their product from everybody else in the marketplace.
Yep.
The second one is the positioning. And really, that is something I recommend a book that people read about this. It's called The Blue Ocean Strategy. And really, the book says everything, the title says everything you need to know about the book. And that is, when you're looking for a place in the marketplace to market your product or service, look for the blue ocean. And all that means is go where the other people aren't. If you go out of the harbor and you look to your left and all the boats are over there, go to your right where the open ocean is. And that's really good business advice, to find a niche in the marketplace where you can go out, because it'll be easier to go out then and build a business in that niche, and hopefully you can come and dominate it. And I mentioned GoPro earlier. It's a perfect example. Here's a guy who invented a camera in his garage, and he's going up against Kodak, Panasonic, all the big camera companies, Sony, and yet the niche that he introduced the camera in was extreme sports, because nobody was doing that. And so the result of that was he was able to build that brand, over 8 years into a $1 billion product. The very next key is deliver more value. And there's a great quote from Richard Branson, and he says that the key is to set a realistic customer expectations, and to not just meet them, but to exceed them, preferably in unexpected and helpful ways. And Richard Branson's built more billion-dollar businesses and anybody I know. And really, it's a very simple thing. And I'll give you an example with OxyClean. When somebody would order the product, instead of just shipping them a tub of OxyClean, they also had some other products, Orange Glow furniture polish and Kaboom tub and tile. We put samples of those in with the product. And so when people received the product, they opened the box and they were pleasantly surprised to get more than they actually ordered. And that's a good thing to do, is always, if possible, deliver more value. The fourth one is something, again, very important. It's always listen to your customers. You'd be surprised how many businesses don't reach out and actually have a conversation with their customers. And the businesses that do that are the ones that have a leg up and being successful, because your customers will let you know everything you need to know about what's wrong with your business and what's right with your business, so you can fix the things that are wrong, and more importantly, double down on the things that you're doing right. So always listen to what your customers are saying and find a way to reach out to them. And then the last one is, I found that every one of these brands or products, I've always had a lot of success in my direct-to-consumer marketing using what I call authentic testimonials. And that's basically the customers that are using your product, listening to what they say, what they like about the product, and using them as a powerful marketing tool to help other people convince them to buy your product or service.
As you said, those are 5 things that to a lot of people in and of themselves might sound more commonplace, but when you look at the specific examples of what you put forward with Sonicare and OxyClean and GoPro, et cetera, and then I think the real power is when you put these 5 things together and you create this model, this framework that you've shown works time and again with these billion-dollar brands.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Dave. I mean, everything. I'm a real believer in synergy, and I always try to come up with 2 + 2 = 6. And if you put any one of these things by themselves are powerful, but if you can implement all of them at the same time, that's going to give your product or business the best chance of success and to be able to grow.
That's the magic for sure. So you've mentioned a couple times so far the notion of direct response, direct to consumer, which is terminology that I think everybody's familiar with. What I hadn't thought about before until I read it in your book was your notion of, instead of direct response, thinking in terms of brand response. Talk to us about the difference there.
Yeah, that it's kind of a little bit of a subtle difference, but if you talk to certain people and you mention infomercials, a lot of people have a negative impact on those because there's, along with the very good infomercials like ones I did for Sonicare and George Foreman Grill, there were a lot of cheap ones that were done, kind of a yell and sell type of thing, and they were still effective. They still were able to sell. But the concept of brand response is really creating a high profile, high quality type of imagery that you'd associate with an established brand while still incorporating the direct response principles. And I guess the best example of that is the GoPro camera. Though if you've ever seen any of those TV spots or even their online videos, really nice looking spots, really showcase the product very well. But at the end of every commercial, and one of their secrets to growth was we used a direct response technique or principle where we asked everybody at the end of each 30-second commercial, we said, go to our website, someone will win one of everything we make every single day. That was the direct response principle. We were able to drive people to the GoPro website, and 3 things happened. First, in order to register for the contest, we were able to capture their name and address, and so we were building a database. The second thing that happened, people going to the website would see the other cool videos, they would share them with their friends, and it created kind of a viral effect. And the third, and probably the most important, is people would go to the website and actually purchase the product, which would generate revenue, which would then be able to be used to create more advertising. So it's a combination of brand imagery with direct response principles.
So really, I feel like the takeaway is, if you're going to go the direct response or direct to consumer route, to make sure that you're doing it in a way that remains true to your brand. And the notion of, if you want to have a refined brand or a brand like GoPro that elicits a certain emotion or feeling, and you do that through, as you said, a yell and sell kind of sales pitch, that's going to be incongruent and it's not going to be true to the brand, and you're likely to turn off the target market that you're going for.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you're sitting down and thinking about all the different things about what you want your brand to be, that congruency, exactly what you said, should follow through all of your advertising vehicles, everything that you're doing that is customer facing. And that's another way of building the brand. And it is just that consistency of messaging and the positioning of it being a higher end brand. And that's how you do it, is just being consistent.
Well, that feeds directly into something else that I was really curious about. You mentioned earlier Fajita Express as one of the products. And until I read your book, I did not know that the George Foreman Grill had a prior life as the Fajita Express. And I think it's an incredible marketing case study in repositioning and rebranding. So can you give us the story of how Fajita Express evolved into George Foreman Grill, and how that really revolutionized things in the market?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. It's a really interesting story. And my co-author on my book, Barb Westfield, was actually the CMO of Sultan Housewares. Now, if you remember, I mentioned Sultan was the company that bought our juicer business, and they bought it for two reasons. One, they were a small appliance company, and they wanted to get into that marketplace with juicers and bread machines, which were our products. But secondly, they were buying the marketing expertise of like how we built the business. And they brought me two products after they bought the business. One was a homemade bagel maker, and the other one was this slanted grill. And really, Barb and I were the ones that kind of put our heads together with the CEO of Sultan, Leon Dryman. And that product had been in the marketplace. It was a fajita maker. And the reason that it was tilted was that they thought that you could hold your taco shell or fajita shell underneath the grill and scrape the hamburger meat into it. Needless to say, that didn't sell very many units. A lot of times with great products, there's a coincidence of circumstances. George Foreman had just regained the heavyweight championship at 46 years old. He was the oldest one to do it. And his agent was looking for products for him to endorse. And there really aren't a lot of products that a 46-year-old heavyweight champion can endorse outside of the sports arena or boxing arena. And, I don't know who had the idea to kind of, fix George up with this. But once we did, we basically took it and we turned that slanted grill, which is really the unique selling proposition of this product. And we came up with the tagline, knock out the fat. And we turned the slanted grill into a benefit that you could cook food that had grease and fat in it. And a lot of the grease and fat would drain away from the food that you were cooking. So you could eat the foods that you really loved with a little bit less fat than they would normally have. And the other part of that is that it was a two-sided grill, and those are commonplace now, but back then they weren't. So it not only was healthier cooking, it was faster cooking. And those were the two main benefits that we focused on in the advertising.
Wow. So how long had Fajita Express been in the market before that changeover?
Yeah, it was probably about a year, and it was a product that was literally, to be honest with you, had already been in the marketplace. It wasn't selling. The parent company, Sultan, had taken it off the market, and it was sitting really in their warehouse. And when the opportunity to connect George with a product came up, it like I said, the product was there, George was there. There was a lot of brainstorming. That's kind of how the George Foreman Grill came about.
So when that product was put into the market, after all the brainstorming and planning and creative and everything was done, how quickly did it click in the market? Was it an instant success as the George Foreman Grill, or did it take some ramp up and some iterations?
definitely took some ramp ups, and it's a really good story. We used a half an hour infomercial to launch the George Foreman Grill. George had never done anything like this, and when I made the infomercial, I was probably in my mid-30s, a guy, thought boxing was kind of a cool thing. And we bought a clip from HBO of George knocking out Michael Moorer to win the heavyweight championship. And I started the infomercial with a clip of boxing. And we got really, really poor results. Matter of fact, it would be considered a very unsuccessful test of the program. And that was really boils down to not understanding who our demographic was, which was basically defined like a person who would buy from QVC at the time, women that were staying at home and basically homemakers. And they don't like boxing in general. So as soon as we took out the boxing footage and we relaunched the product, it turned into an immediate success. And the TV generated lots of sales, lots of orders, and really created the awareness for the product that helped make the retail sales successful.
Yeah, well, and that speaks to the power of, as you also talk about, creating a story around the brand and listening to your customers to learn their stories. So whether it's George Foreman Grill or some other product, what have you learned throughout your career about the importance of listening to customers and learning from them, building stories around them? And is there even another situation where you change the positioning or the direction of a product based on the stories that you heard from customers and what they really wanted?
That's a great question. And I want to answer it kind of in two parts. The first is, when anyone brings a company or business or service to me, I've always had the most success if that product has been out in the marketplace, even on a small level, even if they're only doing a couple $1,000s in sales, maybe $10,000 in sale, whatever. And what that does is give me the ability to go out and talk to the consumers. And so the first thing I do is reach out to people who have purchased the product or service, and I set up a testimonial shoot, which we talked about earlier. But really it serves as twofold. If I get good feedback from the people, I can turn those into testimonials. But more important is, that's the focus group that I do. And I like it better than doing a regular focus group, because these are real customers who take money out of their pocket to purchase the product. They're going to give me real feedback. And I've always learned that if I talk to 15 or 20 people like that, they're going to, again, tell me everything I need to know about what they like about the product, and I can help craft the marketing message from that. And every one of the products we talked about today, I've used that similar type of thing. And I guess a good example, and it goes back a little bit further to a repositioning of a product, and that's the Juice Man Juicer. And when we started working with the Juice Man Juicer, the two most popular products in the marketplace were made by German companies, Braun and Krups. And because they were German companies, they focused on the engineering, that they had stainless steel blades and a powerful motor and dishwasher safe plastics. And they were selling the product as an appliance. And so when we started working with the Juice Man Juicer, our repositioning was taking it from a household appliance into a health product. And we focused on the benefits of drinking the juice and not the features of the juicer itself. And that was a repositioning, but also brings up the really important marketing point of, you need to tell people what the features of a product are, but you should always attach the benefit to the end user when you're pointing out the feature. And if you say it has a powerful motor, that's because for a juicer, you're able to make juice from the hardest vegetables like carrots or apples or even pineapples with the skin on. And so we always try to focus on the benefits of a product to the end consumer.
Right. So take the same values that the German brands would promote, but instead of focusing on them for simply what they are, expert engineering and high quality, but then connecting that back to, so what does that mean to you as a consumer, really in layman's terms? Because of course we want a high quality product that's going to last longer, but ultimately we're buying it for another much more personal reason.
Yeah, I mean, a really simple thing. If instead of, again, talking about the high quality engineering, we said, okay, if you drink this juice, it's got anti-aging benefits. You can live longer. You can have lower cholesterol, lower blood pressure, healthier skin, hair, and nails, just all sorts of things that are really health benefits. And that's what helped make that business or product take off in the marketplace.
Yeah, and clearly what you knew was that people don't buy a juicer because they want a juicer. People buy a juicer for the benefits that's going to bring to their lives.
Yes, and it definitely helped to have a spokesperson who was 70 years old and had the energy of a 40-year-old. And that that's a whole separate thing we talk about in the book, is coming up with the right spokesperson for a product. And I always defer. There's a lot of people who are company founders, inventors, and to me, those are the most authentic spokespeople for a product. Is if you are the inventor, even if you don't have good camera skills or whatever, there's an authenticity and passion that comes across that makes up for any lack of camera skills.
You mentioned earlier the value to you of conducting testimonial interviews, whether you use those as a research or learning experience for yourself, or whether some of those actually get turned into testimonials that are used in the spot. I'm curious, in our research, one of the things that we hear over and over again when we're testing direct response advertising or infomercials is that testimonials come across as disingenuous. Our research participants don't even believe that those giving the testimonials are real users of the product, when in fact, the vast majority of the time, they are indeed real users, and they're not even being scripted, but they're coming across that way. What have you learned are ways that testimonials from real users using their own real words, but maybe people who are not comfortable being on camera and who aren't natural in that environment, what are some ways that you've learned to still make those testimonials come across as genuine as they actually are?
Yeah, that's a great question. And first of all, I want to say I agree with what you've found through your research. I've found the exact same thing. And I've always used authentic testimonials, real customers throughout my career. And we'll be sitting in a focus group or just getting feedback from people, and they don't believe that, or it's not that they don't believe the testimonial. They think that they're actors or something. Mm-hmm. And it's a little bit frustrating, but it's just human nature. So I think what's happened is, for me at least, I've had to make a little bit of a transition. And if possible, I've found that I have more success now emulating the type of testimonial from a production standpoint that you see on social media, something that's not shot with makeup people and a beautiful background, but something more that's down and dirty and quick. And the absolute best place now for me, and you don't always have this opportunity with every product or service, is picking up testimonials at a trade show. If you're a client or you have a booth at a trade show and people come up to the booth and you just hire a cameraman that's kind of just shooting people in the moment that are just like, hey, I love your product. They come across, to me, those are the ones that come across the most authentic, the most real, because that's something that would be really hard to fake. And even though you and I, David, both had the same experience, we create testimonials that are real authentic testimonials. When you sit them down and make them up really look nice and the background's beautiful, for whatever reason, people don't believe them. But let me just add to that one thing, is that even they might not be, people believe them. If you tested two commercials, and I've done this, one without testimonials and one with testimonials, I've always found that the one with testimonials will always work better. So I'm a big advocate of using authentic testimonials in any form you can get, but the more realistic you can get, the better off you'll be.
And it sounds like really, if you have the opportunity to shoot them in a more candid way, that's where
Yep.
you're going to get things that come across more real, because generally those giving testimonials are not actors by trade. A heck of a coincidence if you run into one or two from time to time, but real people sitting in front of a camera have a certain mannerism about them and get naturally uncomfortable. And so if you can find a way through directing to get them in a candid, more natural environment, that's also going to come across a lot more real, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing that we do to add to it is when you just have, and you'll understand the concept of just a talking head. We like to build as much of a story as possible. So instead of like these short testimonials that are like, oh, I think that's great, that's the best product I ever bought, I like to go more in depth. And it's like, here I was a person before I bought this product, I bought it, here's how it changed my life. And then they're telling us this story, little mini story, and we're laying images over, known in the industry as B-roll, over the story, so that it's a more compelling story than just quote unquote the talking head that you see as a lot of testimonials.
Right. No, that's great advice. Also in your book, you talk about a concept I found interesting. You talk about the notion of the power of words ending in Y, and that's the letter Y, not the word why. Take us through that concept and how you've integrated that into your work.
That's a good one, and that kind of came about just because I started thinking about it. And there's a great book by Simon Sinek called The Power of Why, and it really has to do with people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So it was really a play off of that. And then I started thinking about some of the words that fit into branding. And we talked earlier about consistency of your brand images, of your message, honesty, things like that, transparency, authenticity. And I don't know why, just all those words were always fit when it came to building a brand and doing marketing. And I just take some time, and I think there's about a dozen words like that I talk about and define. And if you can use that in your marketing, it always turns out to be beneficial.
Yeah, it's a great hack. And it's also a great riff on the notion of finding your why. Ultimately, all of those words that you're talking about that end in Y feed into the reason why something would work or why you would do something. So it's a good mental trick, I think, just to keep it top of mind and get people thinking that way. Finally, before I let you go, I had another question. You mentioned GoPro earlier, which is a brand that I think when people think about direct response, direct to consumer, that's not a brand that comes to mind, because again, as you know, people think about infomercials and everything that's classic about infomercials, but yet you've helped take the GoPro brand into that, in addition to all of their retail sales, into that direct to consumer. And you talk about the notion of making your customer the hero, excusing the pun that happens to be the name of one of GoPro's products. I'm curious about the strategy that went into how to take that essence of the GoPro brand, which is really all about that exciting lifestyle that you can lead and capture when you're using a GoPro, and translating that into something direct to consumer with a direct call to action.
Yeah, so that's a great question, and it's a good one to end on. It's really valuable information. So one of the secrets of the GoPro camera, not so much the camera technology, because there's giant companies that had the same type of technology, but the other thing that the founder, Nick Woodman, did was he came up with all sorts of mounts and straps and ways where you could turn the camera from an outward-facing product, which most cameras were used to take pictures of other people, where you turned it around and were taking pictures of yourself. And it made the camera about the word you. It documented the things that you did. And that was another part of the secret to success. It tied right into the whole selfie movement that was happening in the marketplace. But it's an important message, a marketing message to take away from that. And probably the simplest thing or advice that I could give to anybody that's in e-commerce, writing a sales pitch, a sales letter, television commercial, is go through your copy, and anywhere where you talk about I, me, we, change that to you and yours, and change the sentence structure accordingly, and make it about the end user or the other person, and all of your marketing will improve and your e-commerce will improve. And it's just a real simple tip that people can go and read their website copy right now, and I guarantee that they'll be able to make some of those changes and it'll perform better.
That's a fantastic takeaway, and we love leaving listeners with tangible things that they can go try right away. So I think of everything you just said, that's the most approachable. The easiest thing to do is go pick something in your marketing mix, whether it's a section of your website or a brochure, a PDF, or something that you've made, and look for those I, me, we words and see how many of them you can rework into you and yours, and see how that changes the tone and makes it really all about the customer and ultimately not about us, which is the way it needs to be.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head.
Well, Rick, I can't thank you enough for giving us some of your time today and sharing the wisdom that's come from this incredible career. And again, the book is Building Billion-Dollar Brands. We're going to link to it. I just finished it. I really took a lot from it. It drove most of what this conversation was all about. So there's tons of information in there. And I really enjoyed it. So thanks so much for talking with us today.
Hey, you're welcome, and I appreciate the opportunity to share some of the knowledge that I've gained, and I appreciate you having me on your show, so thank you.